The galaxy had long forgotten Earth's first great fleets, vessels of humanity's ambition that had once carried explorers, warriors, and pioneers into the dark unknown. These were no ordinary ships. They were masterpieces of human ingenuity, forged in the crucible of survival, shaped by a species that had endured millennia of struggle, conquest, and rebellion. Humanity had not inherited the stars. We had seized them, driven by a relentless curiosity, stubborn courage, and the unyielding instinct to endure at any cost. 10,000 years ago, these fleets had set out into the void with hopes of discovery, of expansion, of claiming a rightful place among the civilizations that had long regarded us as a minor, inconsequential species. And then they had vanished. The disappearance had been sudden, complete, and inexplicable. Entire squadrons of dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, and exploratory vessels had simply disappeared into the uncharted subspace currents beyond the Orion expanse. No distress signals reached home, no communications were recorded. Fleet logs stopped abruptly. Historians and scholars across the galaxy debated the cause. Some argued that black holes or spatial anomalies had claimed them. Others whispered of unknown alien predators. Still others speculated that the fleets had been deliberately abandoned or lost to mutiny. But all accounts agreed on one fact. Humanity's first fleets had disappeared, and with them the first chapter of our interstellar empire. Over millennia, the fleets became legend. Alien civilizations told stories of these vanished vessels, exaggerating their size, their power, and their ferocity, weaving myths of a species capable of surviving impossible odds. To the Arconian counselors, the fleets were cautionary tales. Humans had once reached far beyond their planet, then vanished, leaving a void that no one dared cross. To the Valyrians, the stories were warnings. Underestimate humanity at your peril, for even when absent, they could shape events far beyond perception. The Raxians, who had encountered humanity only decades after the fleet's disappearance, catalogued the legends with fascination, convinced that any species capable of such long-range exploration was either extinct or incapable of surviving the political and technological pressures of the wider galaxy. And yet, in all of these tales, the truth was obscured. The fleets were not destroyed. They were not abandoned. They were waiting. Earth remembered. Every secret archive, every hidden vault beneath ancient cities, every data repository within orbital stations and lunar bases preserved the fleet's coordinates, designs, and protocols. Humanity had recorded everything, not as an idle exercise of nostalgia, but as a strategic investment for the future. For 10 millennia, the records had been studied, updated, and perfected. Hidden laboratories developed methods of long-term stasis that would keep crews alive, intact, and operational across the ages. Engineers, scientists, and tacticians devised systems that could survive both physical decay and the unpredictability of interstellar travel. And above all, humanity designed a failsafe. When the time was right, the fleets would awaken. They would emerge from the void, not as relics, but as an active, synchronized force capable of reminding the galaxy that humanity endures, evolves, and is never to be underestimated. Civilizations beyond Sol had moved on in our absence. They had risen in arrogance, building empires on the assumption that humanity was gone, that the Earthlings who once reached the stars had succumbed to the same fate as countless other species that vanished in the void. They had grown complacent. They had assumed the legends were exaggerations, fairy tales meant to entertain or caution. They had forgotten, or worse, ignored, the lesson that humanity teaches all who attempt to dominate it. Patience is a weapon, and silence is its precursor. And so the galaxy expanded, unaware that the seeds of its reckoning were drifting silently through the dark, guided by the oldest, most patient intelligence it had ever ignored. Within the archives of Sol, the protocols for activation were reviewed repeatedly. Generations of humans who had never seen the fleets in person studied their designs, optimized their capabilities, and prepared for the day when the first signal would echo across the void. It was a task of obsession, carried out not for pride, not for conquest, but because humanity understands one unshakable truth. Survival is not measured in the years that pass in comfort, but in the preparation for the years when action becomes inevitable. Every crew rotation, every stasis pod, every engine system, every weapon and sensor had been designed to endure the slow, grinding march of time. And for 10,000 years, the galaxy believed it had won by default, that humanity had vanished. But now, as subspace currents shifted, ancient engines hummed, and stasis chambers opened after millennia, the first signals of awakening stirred across the void. The long-lost fleet, silent and precise, began to move. The ships, each a masterpiece of human design, lit their engines for the first time in 10,000 years, and their trajectories were perfect, unerring, and deliberate. Humanity's long silence was over. And the galaxy, which had assumed we were gone, would soon discover that our patience was the most fearsome weapon of all. The lost human fleet was no myth. It had always been real. And as the first vessels emerged from the dark edges of uncharted space, every civilization in the galaxy would learn what the descendants of Sol truly meant when they acted. Inevitability. The awakening of the lost human fleet was a quiet catastrophe for the galaxy. Across 10 millennia, civilizations had adapted, expanded, and assumed that humanity's disappearance had erased us from the stars. Entire empires had risen in the voids once charted by Terran explorers. Trade networks flourished, colonies thrived, and the Council of Systems asserted control over sectors where humans had once navigated boldly. Yet none of them had anticipated the precise, deliberate reawakening that was about to occur. The first hum of engines, imperceptible to most, stirred across the darkness of space like a heartbeat. Slowly, methodically, ancient vessels long believed lost began to come alive, systems powering up as if awakening from a dream older than most civilizations themselves. Suspended crew emerged from stasis in quiet efficiency. Their bodies, preserved in perfect balance of chemical inhibitors and nanostabilizers, had endured 10,000 years untouched by age or decay. Minds were fully intact, carrying centuries of knowledge, tactics, and hard-won experience of humanity's first galactic forays. Generations of engineers, scientists, and strategists had honed protocols for such awakening, and the procedures unfolded with flawless precision. Each crew member moved without confusion, immediately assuming roles drilled into their memory, accessing systems, running diagnostics, and synchronizing across the fleet with a coordination that no contemporary fleet could comprehend. These were humans of another era, tempered by survival, hardened by exploration, and enhanced by thousands of years of careful planning. Yet they were fully human, fully alive, fully capable of imposing their will upon the galaxy. The fleet itself was a marvel of ancient human engineering, designed not only for battle, but for survival across the uncharted void. Each hull was layered with adaptive alloys that absorbed impacts far beyond contemporary expectations. Engines used quantum resonance drives capable of slipping through subspace currents undetected, allowing the fleet to traverse light years without interference. Weapons were advanced, subtle, and perfectly tuned, able to neutralize entire fleets with precision rather than chaos. Sensors and scanners, seemingly archaic to modern eyes, revealed capabilities that outclassed many contemporary systems, able to detect, analyze, and adapt faster than most civilizations' AI could comprehend. Every vessel was a time capsule of human ingenuity, but more than that, each was a testament to patience, a weapon honed over 10 millennia of planning, waiting, and enduring in silence. As the fleet moved through previously uncharted sectors, it left a trail of astonishment. Outer Rim civilizations first detected the ancient engines, but sensor readings failed to reconcile the data. Hundreds of ships of unknown origin, ancient yet technologically formidable, moving with purpose that suggested intelligence beyond standard calculations. Across the void, whispers of myth became reality. "The Terran fleets," muttered analysts. "They were gone, but no, they can't still exist." Panic and awe spread simultaneously, as each system realized that humanity's first great fleets had not been destroyed, but preserved, ready to reassert their presence in the galaxy. The Council of Systems, ancient and confident, moved to respond, but already their assumptions began to unravel. They had modern fleets, fleets built on centuries of technological advancement and strategic doctrine. But the Terran fleets were something else entirely. Their coordination was flawless, their capabilities unmatched, and their strategies informed by a combination of experience, ingenuity, and the deliberate patience of a species that had waited 10,000 years for the moment of awakening. Every move, every acceleration, every calculated trajectory reflected centuries of foresight and preparation. Humanity's silence had been absolute, but now that silence had become a force, moving inexorably toward every system that had assumed we were gone. And then, the humans spoke for the first time, not in anger, not in haste, but with clarity and unshakable authority. Across all communication channels, the same message echoed, reaching the ears of every civilization that had grown arrogant in our absence. "We have returned. You believed we were lost. You believed humanity was extinct, irrelevant, or weak. You were wrong. 10,000 years of patience is not weakness. You will remember the descendants of Saul and what it means when they choose to act." It was a message heavy with inevitability, a warning wrapped in the calm, precise voice of humans who had mastered survival, technology, and strategy across epochs. The galaxy trembled. From the farthest reaches of subspace to the inner systems, civilizations realized the truth too late. The lost human fleet had returned not for conquest or revenge, but to reassert what should have never been forgotten. The fleets moved as shadows of inevitability, a ghost armada emerging from the dark, carrying the combined experience of millennia and the patient fury of a species long underestimated. Entire sectors would feel the impact. Every empire would adjust its calculations, and the stars themselves seemed to acknowledge the return of humanity. The legend had become reality, and the galaxy would never be the same. The lost human fleet moved through the Outer Rim like a phantom, silent and deliberate, yet every civilization sensing its presence immediately felt an existential tremor. Star systems that had grown complacent in our absence now stared into the void, detecting engines, weapons, and energy signatures that defied every calculation their analysts had ever made. Entire patrol fleets scrambled to intercept the advancing ships, but the humans were not rushing, not panicking, not acting recklessly. Every maneuver was precise, every acceleration exact, every formation flawless, a choreography honed across 10 millennia of waiting. The first engagement came without warning. A coalition of Outer Rim patrol ships, confident in their superiority over the mythical Terran remnants, moved to block the fleet's advance. They assumed the humans would respond in kind, with predictable aggression. They were wrong. The Terran ships did not fire blindly, they struck surgically, disabling engines, shields, and communications in a matter of minutes. Entire fleets drifted helplessly, their crews bewildered, as ancient yet perfectly preserved technology rendered modern defenses obsolete. Humans moved with efficiency that the galaxy could scarcely comprehend. Each strike was designed to assert dominance without unnecessary destruction, a demonstration of control as much as power. The Council of Systems scrambled to respond, dispatching their most advanced vessels to intercept, but the fleet's superiority became immediately apparent. Tactical grids were jammed, weapons neutralized, and communications paralyzed before any organized resistance could coalesce. The Terran fleet had anticipated every standard maneuver, every defensive protocol, every response a modern empire could muster. Ancient AI systems integrated with human intuition, long-forgotten algorithms of war recalibrated for the present, and the patience of a species that had waited 10,000 years converged into one unstoppable force. The Council's flagship was forced into evasive maneuvers it had never been designed for. Its crew panicked as their calculations failed repeatedly. Humanity did not speak until the first major engagement concluded. Then, across all channels, a voice carried the weight of centuries. Admiral Ria Solari, descendant of the original commanders, spoke calmly and deliberately. "We have returned. You assumed we were gone. You assumed weakness. You assumed time had eroded our skill. You were wrong. We are the inheritors of 10,000 years of survival, ingenuity, and patience. You will remember, Soul." The words alone carried authority, a calm and unyielding certainty that made the fleets of the galaxy hesitate, falter, and even surrender without further conflict. The lost fleet advanced, but not blindly. Planets under threat of occupation or control were not immediately destroyed. Rather, they were surveyed, mapped, and neutralized only where absolutely necessary. Infrastructure, civilian populations, and natural resources were spared wherever possible, demonstrating a mastery of strategy that went beyond brute force. Humanity was showing the galaxy that 10,000 years of patience and experience had produced not just powerful weapons and resilient ships, but a species capable of decisive, ethical, and calculated action on a scale never seen before. Word of the fleet's capabilities spread like a supernova through the galactic communications network. Empires that had assumed humanity's extinction began to panic, sending fleets, envoys, and emissaries to investigate. Yet no contemporary technology could match the coordination of the Terran ships. Even the most advanced artificial intelligences, designed to anticipate human behavior, found themselves outmaneuvered, their calculations constantly subverted by tactics drawn from ancient experience and honed over millennia. Fear replaced arrogance, awe replaced dismissiveness. The galaxy began to recognize that a species underestimated for 10,000 years was not merely back, it had evolved into something far beyond expectation. The first major battle of this resurgence concluded with minimal casualties for humanity, yet catastrophic strategic losses for those who had assumed dominance. Entire fleets of modern vessels, considered superior in design, drifted immobilized, their crews bewildered and systems compromised. The Terran fleet moved on, leaving behind silent monuments of power, warnings written in the wreckage of arrogance. Civilizations across the Outer Rim realized an unshakable truth. Humanity was no longer a local concern. Humanity was a force of galactic inevitability, a species whose patience and endurance had transformed into supremacy. And as the fleet prepared to move deeper into contested space, the galaxy's leaders understood that history would remember this moment not as a battle, but as the awakening of a species that had been underestimated for 10,000 years. Humanity had returned, fully prepared, fully capable, and fully determined. The lost fleet had proven a singular truth: when humans act, the universe listens. And the trembling that began in the outer rim would ripple through the galaxy, announcing that the children of Sol had reclaimed their place among the stars. The galaxy reeled as the lost human fleet advanced beyond the outer rim, moving deeper into systems that had long assumed humanity was a relic of history. Entire sectors paused as alien civilizations realized that the legendary fleets were real, operational, and incomparably formidable. News of the fleet's capabilities spread faster than any communication network could carry, rippling through the Council of Systems, regional alliances, and independent worlds alike. Where once humans had been dismissed, fear, respect, and awe now replaced arrogance. Analysts scrambled, fleet commanders panicked, and diplomats worked frantically to understand a force they had long considered extinct. The Council of Systems, the ruling authority over much of the galaxy, mobilized its most advanced forces. They sent their largest dreadnoughts, battleships, and strike groups to intercept, confident in their technological supremacy. Yet the Terran fleet was not only prepared, it anticipated every response. Every formation, every strategy, every attempted blockade or engagement was countered with flawless precision. Shields were neutralized before weapons could fire, engines disabled before maneuvering commands could be executed, and communication arrays rendered useless by a combination of electronic warfare and human intuition encoded into ancient AI systems. Modern fleets fell silent, drifting helplessly, as the Terran fleet demonstrated the terrifying efficiency of patient planning matured over 10,000 years. The first major engagement within these contested sectors was over in hours. Entire fleets of the Council's best vessels were left immobilized, systems scrambled, and command structures in chaos. Humanity did not annihilate these forces. The attacks were deliberate, precise, and controlled, a statement of capability and restraint rather than sheer destruction. Ships were disabled, not destroyed. Lives were preserved, not eradicated. Every action conveyed a single, chilling message. Humans do not act recklessly. Humans do not strike without purpose. And humans, after 10 millennia of waiting, have mastered strategy beyond imagination. The galaxy learned that patience itself could be weaponized, and that silent preparation could be more deadly than any direct assault. Across communication networks, Admiral Rhea Solari addressed every surviving fleet, every system capable of receiving a signal, her voice calm and commanding. You believed we were gone. You believed we were weak. You assumed time had diminished our skill. You were wrong. Humanity endures. Humanity acts with purpose. You will remember the children of Sol. Her words were not shouted, not embellished. They carried weight because they were backed by 10 millennia of preparation and the absolute certainty of action. The Council and its allies now faced a species that combined the experience of a bygone era with the technological and strategic mastery of the present. Their arrogance, nurtured over thousands of years, evaporated in the face of a patient and deliberate force that could not be ignored. As the fleet moved system to system, the galaxy witnessed a demonstration of unparalleled precision. Human forces restored order in some regions, liberated planets that had suffered under tyranny, and neutralized militaries with minimal collateral damage. Entire civilizations watched in awe as humanity revealed that supremacy was not measured only by destruction or dominance, but by the ability to enforce justice, maintain control, and project power with ethical restraint. No empire could claim to understand this combination of intellect, patience, and strength until they had witnessed it firsthand. The Council of Systems, desperate to regain footing, convened emergency assemblies, but even their deliberations were fractured. Systems they once controlled drifted toward autonomy or submitted to negotiations under conditions dictated by Earth. Fleet after fleet realized that engaging the Terran forces directly was not only futile, but potentially catastrophic. Diplomats and leaders who had assumed that humans were a minor threat began to reassess every calculation, every alliance, and every assumption. Across the galaxy, the same truth resonated. The lost human fleet was not a relic. It was an unrelenting, calculating, and inevitable force. And in that revelation, the galaxy understood something more profound. Humanity's return was not mere conquest. It was a lesson in endurance, strategy, and the moral application of power. Every system that had once dismissed us now learned that 10,000 years of patient preparation could manifest as an unstoppable, disciplined, and ethically guided force. The galaxy trembled not only at the technology and tactics of the Terran fleet, but at the certainty of their purpose. Humanity had not returned for vengeance, not for glory, not for domination, but to assert what all civilizations must eventually accept. The descendants of Soul endure, adapt, and act with a precision that is inevitable and unchallengeable. The lost human fleet continued its silent, inexorable march, leaving the galaxy in awe, fear, and trembling anticipation. The era of underestimating humanity was over. The stars themselves seemed to acknowledge the re-emergence of a species that could wait 10 millennia and still claim its rightful place among the great powers of the cosmos. And with each system reached, with each fleet neutralized, with each message transmitted across the void, the same lesson was written clearly in every corner of the galaxy. Humanity is eternal, patient, and unstoppable. By the time the lost human fleet had traversed deep into contested space, the galaxy had already begun to reshape itself in response to our return. Civilizations that had assumed humanity extinct now understood the chilling reality. We had not only survived, but we had endured with purpose, patience, and an intelligence honed over 10,000 years. Entire sectors of space that once relied on council oversight or dominant empires for stability now paused, reconsidered, and re-evaluated the balance of power. Humanity's emergence was not merely a military event, it was a paradigm shift, a reassertion of the truth that a species underestimated for millennia cannot be ignored. The Council of Systems, desperate to reclaim authority, convened emergency summits and dispatched their most capable commanders, yet their efforts were futile. Every action they attempted was anticipated, every strategy countered before it could be executed. Terran ships moved with fluid coordination that made conventional tactics obsolete. Fleets that had considered themselves superior found themselves disabled, stranded, or forced into retreat without a shot fired. It was not chaos that defined humanity's return, but precision. The mastery of strategy, technology, and patience intertwined into a force that was at once ancient and unmatched by any contemporary civilization. Humanity's methods were deliberate and purposeful. Entire planets were surveyed before intervention, civilian populations safeguarded, infrastructure preserved whenever possible. Every engagement was designed not for annihilation, but to enforce the lesson the galaxy had long ignored. Underestimating humans is fatal. Ships of the Council were captured or neutralized, fleets paralyzed, and systems liberated without unnecessary bloodshed. The message was unmistakable. Power tempered by strategy and patience is more formidable than raw strength alone. Across the stars, civilizations began to recognize that this was not conquest for conquest's sake. This was a demonstration of what a species forged by survival, endurance, and ingenuity could achieve when finally awakened from the silence of millennia. The human voice resonated across the void, calm yet unyielding. Admiral Rhea Solari addressed the galaxy, her words carrying authority beyond comprehension. You assumed we were gone. You assumed weakness. You assumed time had eroded our strength, our skill, our resolve. You were wrong. Humanity endures. Humanity acts with purpose. And when humanity acts, the universe listens. Remember the descendants of Sol. Those words alone reshaped alliances, inspired awe, and instilled a fear that was not born of cruelty but inevitability. Across the galaxy, leaders, fleets, and civilizations recalculated every assumption they had ever made about humans. With each system reached, the lost human fleet demonstrated its supremacy. Communications, trade networks, and even militarized colonies recognized a new truth. Humanity is patient, humanity is deliberate, and humanity is eternal. Entire empires that had flourished in our absence realized that their growth, their power, and their arrogance were all built upon an illusion. They had assumed that the silence of Earth meant consent, that disappearance meant weakness, that absence equaled irrelevance. The fleet's return shattered those illusions completely. Every maneuver, every deployment, every precise strike revealed that humans were not only capable of surviving 10 millennia in stasis, but capable of executing a campaign that combined strategy, ethics, and overwhelming force. The final demonstration of our return was not marked by wholesale destruction, but by absolute inevitability. Entire fleets of enemies surrendered without resistance when confronted with the precision and overwhelming coordination of Terran forces. Systems that had once defied or ignored humanity now sought terms, alliances, and recognition of our authority, not out of fear of death, but out of respect for inevitability. Humanity's supremacy had been reasserted, not through hubris, but through mastery of survival, intellect, and strategy. The galaxy understood the lesson. Patience is not weakness. Silence is not absence. And 10,000 years of preparation is a weapon of unmatched potency. And so, the lost human fleet, awakened from the shadows of history, claimed its rightful place among the stars. Civilization after civilization, empire after empire, acknowledged the immutable truth. Humans are enduring. Humans are cunning. Humans are inevitable. The stars themselves seemed to bow, not out of fear, but out of recognition of the return of a species that would never again be dismissed, underestimated, or forgotten. 10,000 years of waiting, preparation, and silent observation had culminated in a singular moment of galactic revelation. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would tremble forevermore at the knowledge that when humans act, the universe listens. The age of underestimating Sol's children was over. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and the echoes of humanity's return would resonate across star systems for millennia to come. We had emerged from the void, precise, deliberate, and unstoppable, proving that patience, strategy, and resilience are far deadlier than arrogance, ignorance, and complacency. Humanity would never be forgotten, never be underestimated, and never be irrelevant again. The lost fleet had awakened, and the galaxy now knew exactly why humans endure.